Jamaican immigrant here. I've been living in the States for almost a year, and I just want to give some context as to why African Americans may be experiencing what they're experiencing when it comes to us immigrants. Um, I'm not here to invalidate that creator's feelings nor anybody's feelings who shares that experience with her. So first things first, the way how African Americans prioritize blackness isn't necessarily the same way in which an immigrant would prioritize their blackness. So you know how African Americans would say, oh, black writer, black creator, black artist, black lawyer, black doctor, black woman in STEM. No, when we come to this country, it's immigrant or nationality, maybe our careers next, and then whatever else comes after that. So immigrant, Jamaican, marketer, whatever else comes after that. The issue that you're having is we don't see ourselves as one of you. And the reason that we don't see ourselves as one of you is not because of blackness. We just see ourselves as an outsider. We have to work twice as hard to get where you are. We are so focused on our own business. Some of us that come to this country don't even have a legal right to be here. You get me? So while you are fighting your fight, which is that of blackness, we are fighting our fight as immigrants first before we even see the fight of being black. Case on point, back in Jamaica, it wasn't very hard for me to get a corporate job. I have the experience, I'm qualified, I'm all rounded, right? When I started applying to marketing jobs here, I was so timid, and I wasn't timid because I was black. I was timid because all my experience is saying Kingston, Jamaica. My education is saying Kingston, Jamaica. My volunteer experience is Kingston, Jamaica. My entrepreneurial projects is Kingston, Jamaica. When those people get my resume, the first thing that they're gonna see is an immigrant. They're not thinking that this is a black person. We're fighting for our place at the table as immigrants to provide for ourselves and our families. I started a business recently, and I'm trying to break into some spaces, and I realized that when I'm on the phone, as intelligent as I sound, they're hardly interested because of my accent. I have an American fiance, and when I'm trying to get into those spaces, I hand her the phone and she speaks on the company's behalf. Why is that? Because they're more inclined to listen to her because she's American. Another thing is how angry you guys are, and rightfully so. You guys have every reason to be angry when it comes to your culture and trying to navigate and stamp your name, right? And hats off to you guys for breaking your glass ceilings and doing the best that you guys can do with what you have given the current situation that's in America. Consider this, where we're from, let me just speak on Jamaica. In Jamaica, racism is not a thing that I've ever experienced. I've experienced classism, I've experienced colorism, but not racism. So the kind of anger that you rightfully have, we don't necessarily have that. We don't necessarily have that anger. We don't have that chip on our shoulders the same way how you would have it. We can empathize with the situation, and we are very upset when we see racial injustice. But the kind of anger and drive that you guys have, we don't always share it. Like, we don't necessarily feel it. Even though we're willing to support you guys, we don't necessarily feel it the way how you guys feel it. And rightfully so, because it is not in our culture. We don't want to go into the square and march because at the end of the day, if the police scrape us up off the road while we're out there marching with you guys, the first thing they're gonna do is call ICE. And that's just the truth. And I get why you would feel the way you feel, because you're expecting like all black people to band together and try to help to break the glass ceiling, but it's just not our number one priority. We're just trying to survive. At the end of the day, we're trying to survive, and we're not trying to get deported. I also find it very offensive when you guys are trying to say, oh, we're trying to be the white man's pet. Like, what do you mean by that? Because African Americans have to code switch if they want to be able to enter into certain spaces. You guys say that, not me. Why do you think it would be any different for us if we are trying to get ahead? Why do you think that we wouldn't want to try to align ourselves with the majority? Because we're in survival mode. My bottom line is everything that we do is not necessarily from a place of race. It's from a place of being an outsider and trying to find our own path on this new journey that we're taking. Those are my 2 cents.
I think she made a lot of decent points. And this brings up a Black American proverb. Hold up, I'm gonna give it a pause. The Black American's gonna say it before I even say it, okay? All skin folk ain't kinfolk. For the most part, I'm just going to respond to her video in the order in which she brings up points, right? So the first thing she says is, African Americans, we prioritize Blackness in a way that immigrants do not, right? So whereas a Black American puts their Blackness first for the most part, we say Black writer, Black lawyer, so and so and so, right? A Black immigrant will put their immigration status first and then their nationality, maybe their occupation, and then everything else comes after that, right? So the first thing that I want to comment about this is the fact that later in the video, she makes a point. Right? She says that she grew up in a place where, Blackness is the majority, so she did not experience racism, right? So she says how in Jamaica, she experienced things like classism and colorism, but there was not enough non-Black people for her to experience things like racism, okay? So because of that, she and other immigrants, they don't have the same outlook on racism that Black Americans do. Let me tell you what I think is so funny about this. And I think it was Jamaica, but I might be wrong. I'm trying to find where I read about this, but I can't remember. I'm pretty sure this happened in Jamaica though, right? There was like a hotel built or something and they closed off the land, for the beach, and they told the Jamaicans, again, because I think this was Jamaica, but maybe I'm wrong, okay? So I'll say they told the local people, whatever country this was, the local people were Black, whatever country this was, right? So they told the locals, oh, yeah, y'all can't come on this beach anymore because this is the private beach for the people in this hotel, right? This happened somewhere where it was a majority Black population, right? And it's funny because something that I tell to these immigrants all the time is, yeah, you come from countries where, for the most part, it's majority Black, so you don't really experience things like racism, right? But, even in your own countries, as soon as non-Black people get there, they are racist to you. Like, I just heard about a store in Nigeria owned by Chinese people. They don't let the Nigerians shop there. So it's funny because you all will immigrate to America and then start yapping about, oh yeah, we don't experience racism in our country because it's all Black people stuff. But you do though. Even though it's majority Black people, as soon as non-Black people come to your countries, and they are because they're still colonizing you, right? As soon as they come to your countries, you experience racism based off the fact that you're Black, okay? So you can sit here and yap on the internet all you want about it's me accent man, but the reality is this. If you called these businesses you were talking about, you're trying to break into whatever business sector, right? If you called these businesses with an Eastern European accent versus a Jamaican accent, you'd have a different experience because it's not the accent, man. It's the fact that you have a Black accent. In fact, let me give y'all a personal example, right? So I used to work in this chemistry lab, okay? So me and my coworkers who had the same job title, we were all chemists and we all had bachelor's degrees in some sort of chemistry. Like mine was biochemistry. I think one girl was actually biology or something. But my point is this. All of us had bachelor's degrees in some sort of hard science, right? If you were working as a chemist at this place, you had to have a bachelor's degree in a hard science, okay? So our direct supervisor, who was the lab manager, she had a bachelor's degree, but she had years of experience, okay? So I was not mad about her being a supervisor. It was not like, oh, like she has the same degree as me, right? Because no, I was a recent graduate. I just graduated from undergrad, right? Whereas, our direct supervisor, she had like 5 or 7 years of experience or something. So even though we had the same degree technically, she had years of experience on us, so it made sense, right? But this was the thing that didn't make any sense, okay? The person above her, who was over like multiple labs, right? She had a degree in criminal justice or forensic science or something. And it was like, how are you over like multiple laboratories and you don't even have a degree in like You don't have a degree in STEM. She did not have like a biology or chemistry or microbiology degree. No, her degree was in like literally criminal justice or something. It didn't make any sense at all. So I mentioned this one day to somebody, because one thing about me, baby, I'm not gonna hold you, baby. I'm a gossiper, okay? I gossip, okay? So I mentioned this to somebody. I was like, how is she, the manager of multiple labs, and she has a degree in forensic science? That doesn't make sense. That's like me being a manager of a bunch of people who have English degrees, some literary whatever, and I got a degree in chemistry. That doesn't make any sense, right? So I mentioned this, okay? And then they explained to me, oh, the reason she got that job is because, well, she used to work in the warehouse, right? Packing the stuff up, because the chemists were making this stuff, and then it'd get sent to the warehouse and the people would pack it up, right? So she used to work on like the assembly line, so to speak, right? But then one day the owners of the company were visiting, the warehouse, and they met her. And they realized she was Eastern European, and the owners of the company are also Eastern European, right? So when they realized that, oh, suddenly she had a big job over the, all the chemists and stuff, even though she didn't even have the right degree, whatever, right? My point is this though, right? If the owners had seen a black Jamaican woman like you on the assembly line, well then, yeah, you would not have gotten that big position despite not actually being qualified for it, right? Not because you're an immigrant, because the woman who got the position was also an immigrant, right? But because you're a black immigrant. Whenever I hear black immigrants talking about how they're immigrants first, I have to laugh. Because it's like, baby, you have so much to learn. Like, you have so much to learn. Like, sit down, get your pen and paper out, start taking notes, okay? I've had conversations on YouTube before about this concept outside of the scope of immigration, right? The fact that whenever you're black and something, whether it's black and a woman or black and disabled or black and LGBTQ or whatever, right? Whenever you're black and something, the blackness always takes the forefront, okay? So I'm black and a woman, right? But this is the thing. Whenever I'm around women for whatever reason, let's say it's college and I go to some women in STEM thing or whatever, do you think that those women embrace me? They're like, girl power, my dog diggity. No, they still look at me as a black person, because to them, that blackness takes the forefront. So you sitting here talking about how your immigration takes the forefront to you, but baby, I promise you, to those non-black immigrants, your blackness takes the forefront. And let me tell you a very funny story, right? It was so hilarious, okay? Now, we've all heard about this war in Ukraine and, all the horrific things happening over there, right? And it was crazy because the United States and Europe opened their borders to these white Ukrainians. It was like, golly gee, my dog diggity, come on in. Like, there's so much going into your country, so much going on over there. Come on into our country and be safe, right? They did that for those immigrants, because they were white immigrants. If something was happening in Jamaica or Haiti or Nigeria or Cameroon or whatever, do you think that you would get treated the same way that those Ukrainian immigrants were treated? Do you think that the United States and Europe would open up their borders? Come on in, we want you to be safe, yada, 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 right? Do you think that because you're an immigrant, you get treated just like all those other immigrants? Absolutely not, baby, because your blackness takes the forefront. Let me move on with her video. She said that the issue that we are having is that these black immigrants don't see themselves as one of us, right? And let me tell you something. That's not an issue that black Americans are having. That's an issue that you all are having. That's something that you're going to have to figure out and you're going to have to deal with. Because let me tell you something. First of all, the only reason you could even immigrate to America is because of black Americans in the civil rights movement, right? So this is my thing, baby. We've been throwing it down since before y'all got here. We can take care of ourselves, right? But the question is, can you take care of yourself? Because like you said, you come from a country where it's majority black. You've never really experienced racism or anything like that, right? So the question is, are you really ready for what you're about to experience in America, right? This is the question that you have to ask yourself, because the answer is you're not, baby. Maybe you should ask black Americans how we are navigating this racist society so you can get some pointers and hopefully you can survive too, right? Maybe, right? But no, you sitting here talking about the issue that you guys are having is we don't identify as y'all. No, that's not our issue. We don't really care if you identify as us, because with or without you, we've been doing our thing, okay? That is your issue, because you're not going to be able to survive until you realize what black Americans been knew. Baby, you're black first. Don't nobody care about you being Jamaican or an immigrant. Don't nobody care about that. You are black first. The sooner you get that into your head, the sooner you will be able to do better. That ain't got nothing to do with us. We good. This is so funny because she goes on to say, so while you all are fighting your fight of blackness, we are fighting the fight of immigration. And then, all that other stuff comes into play. And it's funny because anybody with two eyes can look and see the difference in how immigrants are treated based on their races. Anybody with two eyes, right? So you'll hear people like this Jamaican woman and, people from other black countries and other types of non-white immigrants like Mexicans and stuff talk about how their accents are such a hindrance when they get to America, how, it's such a hindrance when they're trying to get a job and this, that, and so and so and so. And it's funny because you don't hear white immigrants saying stuff like that. When they come to America with a European accent, they don't have any issues getting a job. And you know what's the funny thing? You know what the funny thing is, right? Towards the end of her video, she goes on, she makes a comment about how she thinks it's unfair that people accuse black immigrants of pandering for white supremacy and stuff. And, I'll talk more about that in the end. But I want to focus on one specific thing that she said. She said, well, you all code switch too. That's what you all said, not me. You all say that when you go into job interviews, you have to change the way that you talk in order to get it. So how can you blame us for yada, 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 so and so and so? And it's funny because she complained about how her Jamaican accent is a hindrance when she's trying to make these business ventures, right? And she says, that's because she's an immigrant, not because she's black, right? But then she goes on to say, oh, black Americans, your accent is a hindrance too. You talk about code switching as well, right? So even though black Americans are not immigrants, our accents are also looked down on. Golly gee, I think it may be because immigration is not the damn issue. I think it may be because the whole thing is about blackness, fool. Like, you were so close to the point and you still managed to miss it completely. This woman goes on to talk about how, her resume is full of experiences from Kingston, Jamaica, and how that presents issues when she's attempting to break into jobs and whatever, right? So she says, yeah, all of my education and my volunteer experience and just everything is Kingston, Jamaica. And that's a huge issue when they look at my resume and they're like, oh, this is a Jamaican immigrant woman, right? And let me tell you why this is so funny, okay? This is hilarious, okay? Now, as a black American, we have all had conversations about how if you have a stereotypically black American name, your resume is going to be thrown into the trash, right? So if you submit a resume, it don't matter how great your education and experiences and stuff are. If your name is Shantanique or Jamar or whatever black American sounding name, your resume is going to get chucked into the trash, right? That's why you will come across black Americans like me. My name is Rachel Smith. I have a very white sounding name, right? And let me tell you a secret, okay? So my first and last name are very white sounding names, but my middle name is an African name, right? Some black Americans name their kids some African stuff, right? So my middle name is an African name, right? And this is the thing. When I apply to jobs, do you think I put my middle name on that resume? Do you think I'm like, oh yeah, my name is Rachel Mbuntu Smith? No, I say my name is Rachel Smith, so they think I'm white. And I promise you, I've gone into many job interviews where they're like, you're Rachel Smith, and you're Rachel Smith with the chemistry degree. Like, what? Because they see my name and they assume that I'm white, right? There are so many black Americans who have been forced to do things like this, give their children passing sounding names because they know what comes from having a black American sounding name, right? So this Jamaican woman talking about, oh yeah, like I go through this because I'm a Jamaican immigrant. Baby, you go through that because you're black. Because I promise if your resume had a bunch of stuff from the United Kingdom on it, you wouldn't be running into these issues. You see how you have a lot of similarities with the things that black Americans are going through, even though we're not immigrants. Because, baby, the problem is blackness. It has nothing to do with you being an immigrant. Because I promise you again, an immigrant from the United Kingdom or France or Switzerland or Luxembourg is not running into these issues with their resumes. Now, this woman said when somebody sees her resume, they see all this Kingston, Jamaica, they judge her because she's an immigrant. They see an immigrant, not a black person. Now, somebody stick with me. Maybe I'm alone in this, but what image comes to your mind when you think of Kingston, Jamaica? Because when I think of Kingston, Jamaica, I don't think of blonde hair and blue eyes. But again, maybe that's just me, okay? When I think of Kingston, Jamaica, I think of black people, okay? There's a different image that comes to my mind when I think of Kingston, Jamaica immigrants versus United Kingdom immigrants. And I'm sure that the hiring recruiters have the same images in their mind when they see your work experience from Kingston, Jamaica versus somebody's work experience from the UK, right? So you realize that where you immigrated from directly ties into this perception that people have about the fact that you're an immigrant. Because I promise you this, right? There are black people who live in, Europe. There are black Brits and stuff, okay? Let's pretend that there's a black Brit who is Jamaican. Say their parents are from Jamaica, but, their parents moved to Europe, had kids, so they're a Jamaican person, but they were born in Europe, right? And let's pretend they have a white person named like mine, okay? Because some Caribbeans do, right? So when they move to America, they immigrate to America, they're a black immigrant, right? But their resume says, oh, yeah, I have all this experience from Britain. And they have a name like Rachel Smith. Do you think that their resume is going to be judged for being an immigrant in the way that your resume is, right? Because the hiring recruiter is going to see Britain on their resume versus Kingston, Jamaica on yours, even though y'all both Jamaicans, because that person's parents immigrated from Jamaica unbeknownst to the hiring recruiter, right? But that person is going to have a way easier time getting that job simply because of where they immigrated from. Because the image that comes to mind when we think of a British person is not the image that comes to somebody's mind when we think of a Jamaican person. Come on, goofball, keep up. This woman talks about how when she's on the phone, trying to make business calls, she always puts her American fiance on the phone, right? Now, this is the thing. She didn't mention what type of American her fiance is. So I don't know if her fiance is black American or white American or whatever. But like I previously mentioned, this woman goes on in the end of her video to say, oh, black Americans talk about how they have to code switch in order to make it. So if her fiance is a black American woman, then her fiance's accent is looked down on as well. But her fiance is code switching into a white American accent in a way that this Jamaican woman is not able to. So she is perceived as whatever because she sounds like a white American person, right? It's funny how these people be so close to like getting the point, but then somehow it just completely like goes over their head anyway. This woman then goes on to say, a lot of black immigrants, we don't have the same anger and chip on our shoulders concerning racism that black Americans do because we come from these predominantly black countries, so we don't experience, racism the way that you all did. So then she says, I experienced colorism, I experienced classism, but not racism. And I want to focus in on that colorism comment. And it's funny because there's this Kamala Harris sound on TikTok, and it's like, you think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the continuum or whatever, right? And it's like, you think that colorism just fell out of a coconut tree? Baby, is colorism not the child of racism? Where do you think this idea that darker skin is ugly came from? Where do you think that came from? It literally came from racism. It literally came from white supremacy. It literally came from Eurocentric standards of beauty. So you sitting here talking about you didn't experience racism in your home country, but you did experience colorism. It's crazy because you come from a country that is majority black and you still experience a direct relation to racism. Isn't that insane that even in a country where it's not even really no white people, you're still experiencing the ramifications of white supremacy? That should go to show you how deep racism really is. Now, she goes on to make a comment about how, these black immigrants, they feel empathy towards black Americans and what we're going through, but they're not going to be out here marching with us or anything because, if they get in trouble, then they're going to get deported and black Americans are not. And I'm not mad at that because, baby, the way that you Jamaican, I'm American, okay? Can't nobody deport me because, baby, this is my Jamaica, okay? So, yeah, somebody can ship your ass back home, but, baby, this is my home, okay? So I can step different in my shit than you can. I'm not mad at you for that. I'm not mad at you for that. Her next comment, though, is just like, okay, so she says she sees why black Americans are upset because we're expecting all black people to band together and attempt to break the glass ceiling of racism, but that's just not black immigrants' number one priority. And it's insane because it should be. Now, it's one thing for you to say, yeah, we can't step how you step because we immigrants in this country and we can and will be deported, right? You can't be deported, but we can. So we can't do a lot of the same things that you do, right? To counteract this racism. It's one thing to say that, but it's another thing to say that dismantling racism is not your top priority because baby girl, I read a statistic somewhere that more Jamaicans live outside of Jamaica than in Jamaica. You have to ask yourself, well, why would that be the case? Why are all these Jamaicans fleeing? Why are they running to America? Why are they running to the UK or wherever, right? Why, right? And you have to take a look around. Look at these, black Caribbean countries. Look at these black African countries. They're in shambles. Right? And it's because of racism. It's because of slavery. It's because of colonization. It's because of the fact that these people are still oppressing you to this day. So for you to sit here and say that dismantling racism is not your number one priority. Now, again, it's one thing to say, you can't go about it the way that I can because you're not American and I am. That's one thing, okay? That's one thing, right? But for you to say it's not your number one priority, oh my God! Again, I gotta go back to Kamala Harris. Baby, you think you just fell out the coconut tree? Are you kidding me? You think that the reason that more Jamaicans live outside of Jamaica than in it is just because y'all was like, oh, let's just run off, right? Are you serious? You don't see how racism is affecting your islands today? Like, let me talk about Haiti real quick. Haiti is tore up, right? And it's because after they revolted against France, the entire world punished them. Haiti is not allowed to have like ships to export their own stuff and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Because of racism. Racism is directly why y'all countries are tore up. It's directly why you have to immigrate to different countries. And you sitting here saying that dismantling racism is not your number one priority. Could you get even, like, what? Could you get any dumber? She ends her video by saying, again, and I know I mentioned this already, she says, yeah, like African Americans have to code switch, so you guys can't call us the white man's pet for trying to do what we have to do to get ahead, the same way that you do what you have to do to get ahead. Girl, you were so close, and again, you missed the point, okay? So you telling me that African Americans are not immigrants, but we still have to assimilate into whiteness the same way that you, an immigrant, has to assimilate into whiteness. So maybe the common factor here is not immigration status. Maybe it's blackness. Maybe it's blackness. It's crazy to me because you all just have so much to learn. So much to learn. And I'm sorry to say this, but in 2024, you should not be this doofus. Like, in the age of the internet where we can all see things and interact, there is no way you could still be just this out of the loop. Like, come on now. Now, I have to point one last thing out. This woman just made a whole video talking about how people who come from countries that are predominantly black, right? So she spoke about Jamaica because that's where she's from. But, I mean, you can substitute any country in, a bunch of countries in Africa or in the Caribbean, whatever. These predominantly black countries, right? They don't identify with blackness the same way that black Americans do because we come from a country that is predominantly white. And of course, we have a different relationship with blackness than they do, right? And I want to talk about this because there has been a lot of back and forth between black Americans, African Americans, and the children of immigrants, right? So let's pretend that, this woman, she has a child here in America, even though she said her fiance is a woman, so she's not going to be doing that, right? But let's pretend that her fiance was a man and they had a Jamaican child in America, right? These children tend to grow up, right? And they'll say things like Black History Month or HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, are for, all black people. It's for anybody, yada, 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 so and so and so, right? They say we all black. It's for all of us, right? And African Americans will explain, well, you all just became black, okay, at the best a generation ago, okay? Because your parents is talking about, well, yeah, we don't really identify with blackness the way that you do, right? But you all just became black 15 minutes ago. And now you telling me that the people who've been identifying as black, somehow our stuff belongs to you all because we call it black stuff, even though you all didn't even identify as black when we came up with this stuff. And I'm talking about that because there's this very real issue with people attempting to take credit for all African American culture. Within the black diaspora, a lot of black immigrants and their children and stuff, they have this what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine mentality as well, right? So they'll apply to, college and apply for black scholarships that are actually intended for African Americans. Because again, we the ones that have been calling ourselves black, not y'all, right? But then they'll also apply to immigrant scholarships and Jamaican scholarship and whatever, right? So it's like you all get your specific scholarships for being an immigrant or Caribbean or Jamaican or whatever specifically, right? But then you also get African American scholarships, which we call black scholarships, because again, until recently, we was the only ones of us calling ourselves black. There's something very disingenuous about this. So y'all will sit here and be like, oh yeah, I don't really identify as black. But then you all up in them black scholarships though, like, hey, like the man not quite mad or whatever, like, okay. Right, but let me get back to this woman, okay? welcome to America and good luck. You are going to need it, because if you've been living in America for 8 months and you still this goofball, baby, oh, I don't know if it's gonna go well for you.